On today's episode, we're discussing combat leadership principles for life. Before we went to break, Jamie was talking about the tenets that are important, and two of them that are so simple are simplicity and communicating. And yet, it's a simple thing. It doesn't cost you anything. And yet, it's so difficult for people to deal with this.
Absolutely. It's in our nature to overcomplicate things. And whenever we do that, we don't set our team or the people around us up for success. We have to learn how to simplify the mission, but then simplify the plans to execute and how we communicate that. And if we're not being effective or people aren't doing what we're asking them to do, we have to look inward and say, okay, how am I communicating this? Can I be more simple, clear, concise?
So let's talk about women being effective leaders in male dominated fields. How can they do this? How can they be effective?
Listen, I love this topic because I work in what would be considered a male dominated field. I work around former US Navy SEALs, Top Gun pilots, these, seasoned combat veterans. And my belief is that women can absolutely be effective. And if anything, there are some incredible benefits to being a woman in a leadership position. And the way that we be effective is not any different from that of the men around us. We have to, as I said before, prioritize relationships, keep things simple, be able to detach from our emotions. And then we need to set people up for success and empower them to solve problems and give them ownership in helping us to execute on accomplishing that mission. When we do that, when we prioritize the team and those relationships, we can be effective in any industry, men or women.
So, are there differences in how these principles apply between men and women? And you just talked about emotions.
I don't think there's differences in how they apply. I will agree wholeheartedly that our experiences and what I see from a lot of women that I work with is that their experiences are different. Absolutely. But the way that we solve those problems is the same. These principles apply across the board. And while it's easy sometimes to say, well, I'm just a woman and my experience is different, that is accurate and that is true. But the reality is we can still solve those problems. We can overcome those challenges by focusing on those principles and taking ownership, which is a key mindset of what we teach of everything in our world. And when we do that, we can be successful in any arena.
So, how can people step up and lead without stepping on people's toes? Because I know, a lot of women think, oh, no, it's okay, I'll wait, or it's okay, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. How do we get over that?
Yeah, there's a balance between everything. What we teach is called the dichotomy of leadership, and you have to find a balance in how we communicate, when we communicate. One of the best things we can do if we don't want to step on people's toes is we can listen. We can prioritize listening, and that is a very underrated tool of a leader. But when we stop and we listen and we observe and we gain perspectives from the people around us, we get better intel. We can make better decisions. We can be more detached from the actual thing we're trying to solve. And that gives us the opportunity to better see what we need to do to execute towards accomplishing that mission or overcoming that challenge. So we've got to listen. We've got to check our own ego, ask good questions. And more often than not, if you don't want to step on someone's toes, let them come up with the plan. Let them come up with how we're going to execute the plan. Give them as much ownership as you possibly can. And you're going to build a really strong relationship with that person and be able to move forward.
So, okay, now I want to move on. You said, egos. How can a person make themselves heard when people don't take them seriously? There are so many women that'll be in a boardroom and you're the only woman, and there's probably 5, 6, 7, 8 guys there. And they feel that they are not being taken seriously and they're not being heard.
If you want to be taken seriously, whether you're man or woman, perform. You've got to perform. You've got to be ready to execute on the things you're being asked to do. You have to do the things you're going to say you're going to do. And if you want to be heard, our instinct is to speak louder or to speak more. And that's actually just not the case. When I speak over and over and over again, my words lose their value. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very thoughtful and intentional on the things that I say when I have something to contribute. And more than anything, I'm going to perform. I'm going to outperform all the people around me. And it doesn't matter if I'm a woman or a man. That is the best way to gain the respect of the people around you and to have the opportunity to build those relationships, which is what you need if you want people to be influenced by you and hear you and listen and want your opinion.
We have a few more seconds before we go to commercial break. But when we come back, One of the things I want to talk to you about is the fact that a lot of young women are having a hard time making a decision. Okay, they want to be heard, but they're not willing to make a decision. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about the answer to this. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Jamie about combat leadership and actually making decisions.